How are we doing, Cedarbrook? Oh, I'm feeling it. Are you feeling it? Exactly. Hey, I love that video so much for so many reasons. My name, by the way, is James Brown. I'm one of the pastors at this place. And if you are new with us, I just want to be one of the ones to personally welcome you. So glad that you're with us today. And what you just saw is that we are in the midst of this mini-series called Reset. And this series was actually inspired by a letter that was written in 2016 by the CEO of Amazon, a guy by the name of Jeff Bezos. And he told all the investors in the company that something was going to be unique about the way that he was going to lead the company. And what he said in this email, Bezos said that he is going to continue leading, as long as he's in charge, Amazon as an aggressive startup company. And what that means, essentially, is that they are going to think and act as if each day was a reset back to the very first day that they went into business, back to opening day. And Bezos calls this way of thinking his day one mentality. It's sort of like Amazon's version of Groundhog's Day, but always resetting back to day one. Now, this article got me thinking about Cedarbrook and the day one mentality possibilities for here, what that strategy might look like. And I think now's a good time to talk about why this is important because, 2020 hit us all really hard, right? I think we can all agree on that. Things started off, though, really well for Cedarbrook in 2020. Cedarbrook had tremendous momentum. Founding pastor Remy, intentional transition off staff was going forward. It was going well. And then right after that, plans for an expansion for a new part of the building, that was moving forward as well. But right after, and you may remember this, I came to preach the last Sunday in February. Right after that, the world came to a screeching halt due to a global pandemic. Not sure if my preaching was related to the pandemic. You can decide for yourself on that one, but no doubt COVID rocked our world and it roadblocked any kind of forward progress that we were making. And as a result, we had to move online, which, as you know by now, online is a good supplement, but a terrible substitute for Sunday morning services. Church online is great, and we're glad that you're dialed in today. So glad that our online family is with us today, but it's hard. Even at home, it's difficult. And it feels like forever since we've all been together. Even at Christmas, we all weren't together again. And although on the surface it felt like the momentum that we were experiencing was slipping away a little bit, as we prayed about the future, as we prayed about the Cedarbrook strategy, one of the things that we began to sense is that God was up to something really unique for this next season. That there would be something different and amazing that He would do as part of Cedarbrook's story in the next chapter. And what we began sensing and feeling is that 2021 is going to be for us a sort of reset. It's almost like we're restarting again or we're beginning again. Like almost 2 decades later, we're having to go back to think about what it was like to be a church plant again. Because we're going to be launching many things all over again. Children's ministry here shortly will be launching again. Youth ministry is changing the way they're doing and launching again. It's like we're going back and starting again. And so I wanted to ask the question, what would it look like if we didn't think this was a bad thing, but rather we embraced this church plant perspective? What if we embraced a day one mentality for us as a people? What would it feel like for Cedarbrook to reset our mindset and behave like we just opened the doors for the very first time? What would it be like if we all acted like it was our day one here again? What would we say if that was the case? What would we do? What things as a church would we stop doing if it was day one again? What things would we start doing? What things would we start doing maybe again? And so to answer that question, last week we looked at John 1 to identify Jesus' come and see strategy. And if you missed that message, I would encourage you to go back and watch it. Kyle did an amazing job talking about our invest and invite strategy, where we invest in and invite people to check out what Cedarbrook is really all about. And this week, I want to look at the very next chapter in John to see what maybe some other essential elements there might be to reset Cedarbrook's mentality back to day one. And so I'm going to take you there today. And if you have a Bible or if you have a Bible app with you, I want to invite you to open up to John chapter 2. Last week was John chapter 1. Today is John chapter 2. So if you would, just join me. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. We'll put the scriptures on the screen that you can follow along. But while you're going there, I just want to say that I'm super excited to be looking at this John passage again today. Why? Well, John is awesome, and that's true. But I also know that there are many of you who have been digging deep into the Gospel of John and the devotional that we put in your Christmas experience bags. And if you started on January 1 with that reading, you are halfway through your 21-day experience with Jesus. So way to go, way to go. What an incredible way to kick off 2021. And so that being said, let's kick off this story as well. John chapter 2, verse 1 starts this way. It says, the next day there was a wedding celebration in the village of Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the celebration. Now, while we're setting up the scene, I just want to stop here because I don't care whether it's 2 years ago or 200 years ago or 2,000 years ago when this story was taking place, wherever, whenever, and any place you go in the world, weddings are a big deal. They're a big deal. Essentially, some of the ladies I know, they've actually been planning the whole thing since they were like 3 years old. Like it's a big deal for the ladies specifically. If you don't believe me, just look at the magazines. There are so many bridal magazines out there. I mean, you know how many bridal magazines? There's dozens and dozens of these things. There's so many of them, tons of them. You've got Bride magazine. You've got a magazine called Brides, which I guess is for our polygamy population. I'm not sure. You've got Modern Bride. You've got World Bride. You've got Elegant Bride. You've even got a magazine called Bride Again magazine for what they have termed Encore Brides because the first showing necessitated a repeat performance, I guess. So here's what I want to know as I look at these magazines is where's the magazine called Modern Groom, right? Like, where's this? Well, the reason is obvious. Nobody cares about the groom or what he even looks like. In fact, they dress all the groomsmen exactly the same so that if the groom doesn't show up or drops out, they just shift over in place and keep the whole thing going. Like, that's our role in this process. But bottom line is weddings are a big deal. They're a huge deal, not just for the ladies, but they're also a big deal for pastors as well. And I've done dozens and dozens of weddings over the decades of my personal pastoring. And if there's anything I've learned about the wedding biz, I've learned that there is a lot of pressure to make sure that you get everything right. And I'm happy to tell you that fortunately I have not botched a wedding yet, but I do know a pastor friend of mine who announced the couple at the end of the ceremony, and in doing so, used the name of the husband's first wife to introduce the new bride. Can you say, awkward, right? That's like the worst. And that's, by the way, about as bad as it gets, unless you are getting married when Jesus was walking the earth, and what happened in verse 3 happened to you. Look at it with me. Verse 3 says, the wine supply ran out during the festivities. Now, in the first century world that Jesus was in, hospitality was actually the dominant cultural virtue. And so to run out of anything would have been a major social faux pas because when there was a wedding, guests would be traveling for weeks and sometimes even months to attend the wedding. So the wedding wasn't just some 1 or 2 hour event. It was a week-long celebration with lots of eating and lots of drinking and lots of dancing. And by the way, for me, if I was ever going to be doing lots of dancing, I would also have to be doing lots of drinking. because I am James Brown in name only, just so you know. Let's be clear. But at some point during these festivities, the worst possible thing happened. The wine dried up. And Mary, Jesus' mom, notices this event happening and decides to tell Jesus about it. Look at the rest of verse 3. It says this: the wine supply ran out during the festivities. So Jesus' mother, Mary, told him they have no more wine. Now, I'm not exactly sure why she went and shared this info with Jesus. Maybe he was attending the Nazareth School of Bartending in the evenings. I don't know, but I doubt it. But having read the Gospels, I guess, my best guess, is that Mary knew Jesus was a man of action, kind of like the Jack Ryan on the Amazon Prime series. I mean, she knew that he would probably have a good idea for what he could do to help this poor couple save face or avoid embarrassment on what was probably the most important day of their entire lives. And reading this story, I love the Bible so much. This is one of the reasons why. Reading Jesus' response to his mother's request cracks me up every time. Look at verse 4. It says this: hey, they're out of wine. Dear woman, that is not our problem. My time has not yet come, right? Now, I just want to say, all the kids, if you're watching at home, kids in the room, pay attention here because this is critically important. We want you to be like Jesus. We want you to talk like Jesus and act like Jesus, except for this right here, right? So when your mom asks you to say, clean your room, your response should not be, dear woman, that is not our problem. My time has not yet come. Wrong answer, just FYI. All right, so Jesus is essentially saying to his mother here, Mom, our last name is not Leinenkugel. It's not $3 Chuck. We are not in the alcohol making business. That's his response to his mom here, but she is just as persistent as he is. Look at verse 5. But his mother told, and this is so important. Look at what the next words are. But his mother told who? You can say it out loud, it's okay. The servants. But his mother told the servants, do whatever he says. This is so good. And so Jesus listens to his mom, and he comes up with a plan. Look at verse 6. Verse 6 says this: standing nearby were 6 stone water jars used for Jewish ceremonial washing. Each could hold 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus, verse 7, Jesus told who? The servants. He told them, fill the jars with water. Now, looking at this on the surface, this seems like an easy enough assignment, right? But what Jesus was asking these servants to do was unbelievably difficult. There was no indoor plumbing at this time, so to fill these jars, they would have had to carry them to a well. And since these jars would have been made out of stone, what Jesus was asking them to do was a back-breaking assignment. If you don't believe me, let's just do some math. The text says that each of the jars had between 20 and 30 gallon capacity. We know that 1 gallon of water weighs 8.35 pounds. Very good. Some of you are so smart. Which means that the servants would have had to return with between 167 to 250 pounds of water. Now you add that weight to the weight of the stone jars, and the total weight of what they would have to carry back from the well to the wedding was going to be right around 300 awkward pounds. Now, I try to imagine what that looked like. I mean, I try to imagine it, and I think it could be like the elimination challenge on Survivor or whatever, but they figured it out. They did it. And even though they didn't win immunity, the servants were part of something worth way more than any other kind of reward that they could have been given. And what these servants experienced in this moment was an absolute game changer. Not just for these servants, but for all future followers of Jesus as well. Check it out. Look again at verse 7. Jesus told the servants, "Fill the jars with water." When the jars had been filled, he said, "Now dip some out and take it to the master of ceremonies." The servants followed his instructions. Verse 9, when the master of ceremonies tasted the water, it was now what? Wine. It was now wine. This is the miracle. This is the miracle here. Now, I want to stop here just for a second, because some people that I've known over my life, that they really don't like this image of bartender Jesus creating an open bar at a wedding. Some people don't like that image. Some people really do like that image of Jesus. But growing up, I grew up in more of a conservative church context, and when I asked the pastor about this passage, he told me that what Jesus was making here wasn't really wine. He said, actually in the story, Jesus was making grape juice or Kool-Aid, which, to be honest with you, I don't find that miraculous. I can even do that. You just put the Kool-Aid packet in the water and stir. Like, that's not that big of a deal. And some people don't like this image that gets presented here of Jesus, but as a result, they choose not to look at it. That they don't like this picture of Jesus making wine, so they choose not to pay attention to the passage at all, which, by the way, I think is an absolute shame because they miss something. They miss something significant. They miss what I think might be, in fact, the most important section of this whole story, because right smack dab in the middle of verse 9 is one of the most powerful truths about what it means for a follower of Jesus to reset their mindset to a day one mentality. And if you don't read this part, you miss this part, because tucked away right in the middle of the story is the why behind why so many people are willing to spend so much of their time and so much of their talent and so much of their treasure selflessly serving people inside of Cedar Brook, as well as outside of the church as well, in the community and around the world. Why so many people are willing to sacrifice in their serving. And this aha moment is found right in the midst of a little small side comment. It's literally a parenthetical statement that gives us unbelievable insight into the mindset of someone who's willing to work hard to see God's dream become a reality in our world. And it's right here in verse 9. Everybody, I want you to see this. Look at it with me. Verse 9 says, when the master of ceremonies tasted the water that was now wine, that's the miracle, not knowing where it came from, here it is, though of course the servants knew, he called the bridegroom over. Did you see it? When the master of ceremonies tasted the water that was now wine, not knowing where it had come from, though of course the servants knew, though of course the servants knew, though of course the servants, they knew what had happened. They knew how that miracle came to be. You see, as I think on this story, I just imagine while all of the guests are fighting over who had the best seat at the wedding, the best seat in the house was not even a seat. Because the best seat in the house is where the miracles are made. The best seat in the house is not actually a seat. It's front row to where the miracles are made. The best place to be in that moment was where Jesus was, where he was doing what he does, because Jesus is always up to something. He's always doing something. He's always at work. He's always changing something. And so the best place to be in this moment was exactly where the servants were, with Jesus, where he was at work. Because the servants served, they got to be part of a miracle. You see, hundreds of guests were at this wedding, drinking the water turned to wine. They were partaking in the miracle secondhand. They were only tasting what Jesus was able to do and what he did. But only those who jumped in and did the hard work of service actually got to see Jesus do what only Jesus can do, which is transform something. And friends, this was true for those that served 2,000 years ago. And I would say that it's still true for those of us who serve today, that the best place to be, the best seat in the house, the best seat at Cedarbrook is where the miracles are made. And the truth is, many of you already know this. You already know this insight. You have this already because you've experienced it. You've jumped up and joined Jesus in what he's doing in this community and around the world. You have already seen what these servants saw. You know what they know. You have already learned what the servants learned in John 2, that because they were willing to serve, they got to not just partake of, but rather to be part of a miracle, that Jesus transformed something. And you know that. And if that's you, I just want to thank you. Thank you for what you do. This is huge. Serving in the way that you serve is a big deal. Sacrificing the way that you sacrifice is a big deal. Week after week, month after month, year after year. Cedarbrook is great because of you and because of what you do. You have already reset your mindset to a day one mentality. But I would also say at the exact same time, there are many of you who are missing out on a major part of what it means to follow Jesus. Because week after week, you come and you taste the wedding wine or the online wine. Maybe you sing the songs. Maybe you're able to stay awake through the sermon sometimes. Maybe you have the best seat in this room or in your house on the couch, but you don't have the best seat in this house, in this church, because the best seat is not a seat. The best seat is where the miracles are made. It's where you get to see lives transformed. And so if you've been here drinking the wine for a while, metaphorically speaking, of course, I want to invite you to do something. I want to challenge you to do something. I want to invite you to think about carrying a water jar here at Cedarbrook, to think about getting involved, to reset your mindset to a day one mentality, to take the next step in your faith journey, to step up and start to serve and go to the place that miracles are made. Because if we're going to adopt a church plant mentality, that's what that means. That we need you. We need all of us together to make this mission go forward, to find your place and to go where the miracles are made. And we have lots of opportunities. As I said, as children start up again, as youth ministry is reimagining what they're doing and starting to meet in person again, as tech is going live, not just on these screens, but all over the world, there are people in our seats that God is calling to take that step and begin to serve in a way that they see Jesus do what only he can do, which is change lives. And so I want you to pay attention to that thing inside of you that says, this is my next step. This is what I need to do. I need to begin to serve. And if you're in the space here, I want to invite you to reach in the back before you leave this place and fill out the serve card. If you're on line watching at home, just go to cedarbrook.info and click serve, fill that out, and we will begin to help you find your place at this place so that you can know what these servants knew, that the best place to be is not in the seat partaking of, but being part of when the miracles are made. Let's pray together. God, we thank you for this moment, and we stand in awe of who you are. And that as you turned water to wine 2,000 years ago, that same kind of transformation is what you are doing all around us all the time. And God, I pray that we would be the kind of people that would step up and step into what that means so that we can not just sip the wine, but we can be saturated with what you are doing around us in this world. And God, I thank you that you call us to something bigger than ourselves, that you figure out how to do things that we don't know how to do, that you open doors that are closed, that you make ways for people to come to you where there are no ways. And God, we want to be front row to that. We want to be where the miracles are made. And God, we can't wait to see what you're going to do next. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. And all God's people said.